Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Timbre record, Hot Dreams. These guys are a band, the musical project of singer-songwriter Taylor Kirk, whose eerie, deep-voiced ballads have been captivating me for like 5 years now. There's a lot of vintage folk, Americana, rock and roll, rhythm and blues, rockabilly, doo-wop, and country music influentially flowing throughout Timbre's records. It's music that really goes back in time, especially on the project's latest 2 releases. And this is music that isn't just looking to the past with the style of music or the genre that is playing out on this record, but also in the production as well. A lot of the instrumentation, especially the guitars, the keyboards, the vocals have this springy echo on them, this really nice, bright 50s style sheen. However, do not take this band as a simple exercise in nostalgia. While a lot of the sounds on this record are old, the very dark and twisted feelings that feed into the songs on this LP feel brand new. Timbre's records have a reputation for being eerie, frightening, kind of like a psychological thriller shot in black and white in the 50s or 60s, or even like a David Lynch film with how he fetishizes the past but presents this very surreal picture of it. The music on this record is music that has the makings of a fantastic serial killer. It's smart, it's seductive, but just strange enough to put me on edge. It's always trying to wander in my periphery or take my focus off of its weird behavior with a very clean outward appearance, like this guy. I've got your number, freako. Well, on Timbre's last full-length LP, Creep On Creepin' On, the band dropped some of its most creepy material yet. Songs that displayed a really twisted view on the world of love and displayed stalker-like levels of obsession. And I was looking forward to hearing a lot of these same characteristics play out onto this new record from Timbre, and for the most part they do. However, there are some noticeable improvements to the recipe this time around. For one, Timbre is much more ambitious with sound and instrumentation on this LP than they were on their previous 4 full-length releases. And there are some very beautiful, catchy, kind of well-arranged tracks on here that aren't quite so disconcerting, like Hot Dreams. Meanwhile, Timbre also delivers some of the most twisted songs I've ever heard them write thus far, such as Run From Me, and both tracks have spectacular instrumental finishes too. Lots of tasteful but flashy horns, strings, background vocals, easily, again, some of the best instrumentation Timbre has pulled together thus far, and the keyboards on this thing. Keys have, for the most part, played a pretty large role in many Timbre records, but here they sound so fantastic. Amazing keyboard sounds on this thing, whether they be from piano or some kind of synthesizer. There are moments where I'm hearing this really kind of grainy, eerie, thin keyboard sound that kind of feels like I'm hearing a mellotron, or at least a mock mellotron. Nearly every piece of instrumentation just sounds otherworldly on this thing. I just feel like I'm really being transported back to the pirate ship of 1950, if you know what I mean, like a ghost pirate ship, but like for a whole decade, not actually like a real pirate ship. The songwriting for the most part has improved in a lot of ways. The tracks on here are dynamic, they're multifaceted. They're not quite as hook-driven or verse-chorus-verse oriented as tracks off of Timbre's previous releases, which make these songs a little less hooky, a little less sweet on the ear, a little less gratifying from a pop music standpoint, but so many of these tracks feel like an emotional and instrumental journey. But still, the verses that are on this record are delivered in the very deep, baritone, stern vocal of Taylor Kirk. The choruses on here blossom very beautifully, and the instrumental interludes on these songs either uplift these tracks into beautiful, heavenly soundscapes that really alter the mood of the song, or they just submerge them deeper into the depression that they were built out of. That is exactly what happens on the opening track from this thing, Beat the Drum Slowly, which for me is a bit of a theme song for Timbre Timbre, a kind of a mission statement. I think it sets the tone of the album really well with some lone acoustic guitars, some chilly bells, a bit of woodwind, what kind of feels like a vibraphone in the mix. There are also these thudding baritone guitar riffs that march in step militaristically with snare drums. It is dramatic as hell. It is like listening to an army of zombies rise from the dead. The instrumental sounds amazing, all this eeriness hanging in the treble side of the spectrum. The bass is heavy, it's thick. There are all these sound effects thrown against it too. There are all these sound effects thrown into the mix too. This song really sounds like a horror movie. And yeah, while in a sense the music is kind of campy, it sounds like it was recorded and orchestrated long ago on some kind of Hollywood soundstage. But that is the very reason that I love it. Not only that, Timbre Timbre embraces this aesthetic so well, but they drive it into uniquely dark territory. I think it's a great reappropriation. Now, the lyrics of this song, which really to me carry the theme of Timbre Timbre as a whole, speak of nostalgia, of a time that seemed illustrious, beautiful, a golden age in its heyday, but now it's just kind of a burnt out, hollow, dead, depressing shell of its former self that is slowly going psychotic, sitting in a very dimly lit room, drinking whiskey, watching Lawrence Welk reruns. The song Hot Dreams, the title track off of this thing, one of my favorite songs of this year, is a wonderful, beautiful waltz. And it's a love song, but the obsession runs deep. I want to wake from hot dreams of you, baby. I want to write to someone so true. But still, there is a little bit of subversion in the lyrics, like on the line, I want to follow through with all my promises and threats to you, baby. And while I do love this song, it is one of my favorite Timbre Timbre tracks, period. I love that the band veers off of that love path to dive into some other song topics too, like Bring Me Simple Men, a song that has a really twangy, dramatic instrumental that feels like it could fit snugly into an epic spaghetti western. I love the watery keyboards or guitars on this thing that sound so warped. And lyrically, the song delves into themes of pride, pretense, swagger, and competition eating up the male psyche. And wanting to surround oneself with people who are sort of free of that baggage seems like an innocent enough desire. However, I'm not so sure that this song doesn't have kind of a darker component to it lyrically that I haven't picked up on yet. There are tracks on here that really throw that in your face though, like Grand Canyon, while it is one of the more strikingly beautiful tracks on this entire LP with an uplifting instrumental finish. Without even paying attention to the lyrics, I just get choked up over what's going on here. And Taylor Kirk is beautifully describing some kind of flight over the Grand Canyon area, seeing clouds, shadows on the ground below, on the canyon, as well as the plane shadows. And then eventually in his lyrical description, he says that he prays for the canyon to swallow the plane whole, which I'm not sure if that's some kind of beautiful visual metaphor or if he's literally praying for a plane crash. The lyrics seem to get even more esoteric for me from there on in, and I'm just kind of drawn into the beauty of that, the additional lyrical imagery, and again, this stellar, spectacular, I just made up a freaking word, finish. The song Curtains has another great instrumental, feels like a sort of weird piece of 60s psychedelic garage pop with an emphasis on the upbeat of the track, which the keyboard rides pretty hard. The bass line sounds a lot like My Sharona, though this song is not nearly as upbeat. And from what I'm gathering, there's kind of like an element of fame going on here in the lyrics. I'm still in the midst of interpreting it, but I can't read out every vocal with the very bouncy, springy, echoed reverb on this track. And it's unfortunate because this song and a few others too are just not hitting me lyrically as hard as many tracks from Timbre Timbre's self-titled, Timbre Timbre's Creep On Creepin' On. Even on the song Locomotion, which is a song on here that I do dig quite a bit, but it doesn't feel nearly as hard-hitting as other, like, lovesick songs from previous releases. I actually think it rehashes quite a few ideas with being a dog, being a machine for this other person's love. But that song, Run From Me, on this thing is really the standout when it comes to anti-love songs. Not only for Timbre Timbre's entire discography, but maybe one of the greatest anti-love songs I've ever heard. The song starts off like a slow ballad type song that reminds me a lot of something such as Elvis's Are You Lonesome Tonight? But our narrator in this track would love nothing more than for his significant other to run away, run for her life. I absolutely love the line on this track where he's saying that he loves the idea of her swinging gait, I guess meaning that she just kind of ran through it, so the gait's still kind of moving. Now, not only does this song have a great instrumental finish, but right after there is another instrumental. There's also an instrumental in the middle of this LP as well on the 5th track, and these two instrumentals are awesome. I am so happy that Timbre continued to put instrumentals on their records and that they came out so good. One of my main issues with their last full-length album is that there were several instrumentals on it that were not enjoyable at all, simply because instrumentally and just emotionally, they felt so out of place with everything else that was going on the record. It was like I was listening to a completely different band play the interludes. Meanwhile, we would switch back into a totally different world and mood and vibe on the normal verse, chorus, verse, lyrical tracks. Here, a lot of the instrumentation on these instrumentals remains the same as some of the instrumentation on the other songs. It's just that they're very well composed, they have great crescendos. But I guess I'm sort of left with an instrumental kicking off this record as well, just like Timbre's last album. I kind of feel like I'm listening to a 2-act play on this thing, in a sense, where I'm getting 4 tracks, then an instrumental, and then 4 more tracks and another instrumental, and I'm just left kind of hungry after all of it. I feel like this last instrumental, while it is good, it leaves me kind of on a cliffhanger. While I think Timbre is writing some of its best stuff to date, I'm still not incredibly blown away by what the band is doing from a holistic album type of standpoint. And aside from the ending on this thing and a few tracks just not being that gripping lyrically, there is the song The New Tomorrow, which to me is really one of the more lackluster songs off of this LP, with verses that are incredibly underwhelming, just not a strong melody coming through there. But the choruses do flourish beautifully. I'm still going to come out here and say that this is the band's best collection of tracks to date, better than their last full-length album, which I did love, so of course I love this new record as well, just a smidge more. I'm feeling a strong 8 on this thing. Transition, if you've given this record a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? And what do you think I should review next? Anthony Fantano, Timbre, forever.